Hey everyone, this is Rohit here. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, I want to talk about Marvel series. I mean, two of the biggest Marvel fans. I mean, he's the biggest Marvel fan. I'm a big Marvel movie fan, and he started from the comics, and that's what this video is about. Because even in YouTube, I don't see a lot of people who have a conversation with like age or like people who started with the comics from 70s. When did you start with the comics? Tell a bit of background about. First let me introduce you. I mean, in the last year workplace, I would have talked about Bob. So this is Bob, and you also would have seen him in the Donkey's Place. So he is the one. So thanks for that. Actually, we shot that today. So this will be coming 1 week after that. So I'll be have to play around that.
Okay.
So and he also started out as a student worker, and he has seen the campus grow. So that's the kind of person. I mean, you don't see a lot of people who have started out as student worker continue. And how many years has it been from the time you have started out as a student worker until now?
As a student worker, it's going to be 37. Well, as a student worker, it's already 37 years.
37 years, and I mean, that's a long time to actually stay in one campus, and then I'm already moving to another campus within a year. So already people are like, trader, he's leaving. So that's the kind of story. But then working with you again, just to keep it short, working with you was a great experience, because for me, it was more like I just came here, and for me, we are actually both two opposite poles in working itself, because we'll be setting up computers. And by the way, Rutgers Camden students, if you guys are watching this, we are the ones. I mean, he's the one who actually set up all the new computers in the labs and in the library. So okay, all credit goes to him. And even while setting up, I'll finish like 5 computers, and he would have set up only 2. It's not to say he's slow, but whatever he does, he makes sure everything is done perfectly. So that's one good approach I learned from you. So thanks for that. But coming back to Marvels, from when did you start following Marvel, and how did you fall in love with Marvel?
Well, in the 70s, I started buying Marvel comics. But before that, my father had bought 3 Marvel comics and read them to us.
And read them, okay.
Yeah. My brother and I, we were young at that time. We were probably like 7, 8. And he picked up some comics and read them to us. And then in like the mid 70s, I started buying comic books for myself.
Wow.
And and started to build up my collection that
okay.
way.
It went with the flow, because I mean, coming from India, if you ask me, like my grandparents or my parents read me stories of like mythology, Hindu mythology. I can't believe someone actually read you stories of Marvel. I mean, that's when did actually Marvel start? Oh my god, people watching
1960.
Okay, 1960.
Basically.
And which year did you?
It started a lot earlier than that. It was called Atlas Comics back in the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
And then, like in 1960, the Marvel Universe started with Fantastic Four #1.
So what's your first comic collection which you built? Like, what's the first superhero which you got, or which comic did you get first? Do you still remember that?
Actually, the first comic I ever bought for my collection was the Justice League.
Oh, DC.
Yeah.
See, even Marvel and DC, we can see that they can exist. I didn't actually. Actually, I didn't know you were a DC fan.
Well, I'm both. I'm a comic book fan. Yeah.
Achha, I have to change the headline for this. Okay, I didn't know that. Oh my god. Okay, this is new to me.
But I lean a little more Marvel, but I'm a fan of DC too. I have both.
Okay, so let's get this thing. Who is your favorite superhero?
Well, Thor.
Okay, he just finished it. And why? Like, do you have any specific reason why?
Just something when I was in school and we learned about Thor and his hammer that he threw and always came back to him. That always fascinated me. When I saw the comics and he was a character in there, I just fell for
that's all is there.
Him.
I mean, by the way, his keychain is that of Mjolnir. So he has a Mjolnir keychain, and even in his room you can see Fantastic Four poster, and then Marvel 1990 calendar. So all that is also there with him. So that's one thing I actually liked. But do you have anyone in DC? Any favorite superhero in DC?
Yeah, I like the Flash and Green Lantern, but there are a lot of heroes I like in both. But
Both
Flash
universes.
and Green Lantern are probably my 2 favorites, and Marvel, Thor, and the Submariner.
Okay.
2 of my
Interesting.
favorites. Yeah.
Marvel movies or DC movies?
Well, that's Marvel movies, but I liked some of the DC movies, and I liked personally the Justice League movie.
Oh, which one?
Um,
Justice League, which one?
well, I liked them both. I mean, there are
Two
things
release,
about
right?
the theatrical release I like, and
Zack
there are a lot
Snyder
of
cut.
things about Zack Snyder's cut I like.
Zack Snyder cut is like I love. See, I mean, a lot of people have strong opinions against Batman vs Superman, but I feel that's one of my favorite movies. It shows the duality of like good, bad, and how each person's perspective works. Like Batman saw it a certain way, Superman saw it. What is your opinion on it? I mean, you are already saying
Well,
Justice League.
I mean, I like the story. I mean, you have to understand. I know the comic book stories that
No,
they
right.
all
That
the
is also
source
true.
material from, and that was as far as movies. That was one of the flaws in the Justice League movie and um, the Batman Superman Dawn of Justice movie, where they tried to borrow from too many different sources and meld it into one movie. I'm like, that's nice that you didn't sneak. You want to throw all these things in there, but does it in the end work? Not
Did
always.
it? Okay. So okay. I mean,
You
I
know,
get that point.
and the Justice League movie, they were trying to catch up and emulate what Marvel had done with the movies,
I mean,
and in trying to rush, they tried to rush too quickly. So that's why Zack Snyder had a cut of 4 hours for a movie because he was trying to introduce characters that hadn't been really introduced in the movies like Marvel had done, where everybody had their individual movie and then
Right.
they
Brought
brought them
them
together
together.
in the Avengers.
I think Marvel kind of planned their movies properly. Like they had phase one, phase two, like
Well, they
the
had
kind of planning which Marvel did. I think DC just kept changing hands again and again with who is production. I mean, it got complex after
well,
a
that's the
point, right? So
WB. The WB, well,
let's not go into that's actually I'll be like, hey, I support. He'll comment on the video. I mean, that's. But have you seen the Marvel comics or DC comics?
Marvel.
Oh my God, he's a strong Marvel fan, so it's hard to actually talk to strong Marvel
Well,
fans.
I like DC. I mean, I collect both. Like I said, see, you have to understand the history. When, especially in the '60s, DC comics were really written more for kids, like under 10 and under. Marvel came along with Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, and Stan Lee started writing comics, and he started putting in the way he wrote the dialogue and everything. It was and the stories were kind of aimed more towards teenagers, an older crowd, and Marvel eventually took over and started selling more comics than DC, and that was like in the early '70s. So DC is a reaction to that. They had to start writing stories that were more, and I really don't think they started to really do that up until like the '80s. But eventually DC started to write stories that were aimed more towards, not just kids. And
So that's
ended up started to write better comic book stories, and then in the '80s you got things like The Dark Knight, you got certainly Crisis, which they merged everything into one universe. You had The Killing Joke. You start to have all these other stories, and then they rebooted Superman, and so
I
I
mean,
think
that's
Marvel motivated DC to become better.
Oh, okay. Actually, this is the first time I'm hearing this kind of opinion, but that is also interesting.
Well, it's not totally opinion. It's history. It's what happened, and part of it is creators went back and forth between the two companies, and
Okay, I understand. Have you seen the change or transition in how, or have you observed the change or transition in how comics are made before and now? Is there any change? Because he's someone who has read comics from before and is still reading right now.
well,
So,
there's a change in the comic book industry. Well, there's been a lot of changes. Back in the '90s, a bunch of artists that worked for Marvel in particular. Maybe some that also did some work for DC, but a lot of them worked for Marvel rebelled and broke away from Marvel and created their own company for a bunch of different reasons that we don't have to go into here. But in a way, they were fighting for the older artists who couldn't get a hold of their original artwork, and so they broke away from Marvel and started a comic company called Image, which has brought to some very popular things in culture, in the current culture, like Walking Dead is based on an Image comic. The Boys on Prime is, I think, also an Image comic. It might be another company, but still all an offshoot of what happened when they
So
broke
basically,
away.
the latest movies or series are in a way taking bits and pieces from the older ones.
Well, the comic book. Well, what happened in the comic book industry is where once they used to sell millions, like 1 million copies of a comic book back in the 40s.
Now, how many are actually reading?
Well, that's it, and then, when video games started to become popular in the 80s and the 90s, people would want to spend their money on video games and not buy comic books. So anyway, to combat this, the companies have started to, it seems like every few years they're doing some massive, thing that goes through all the storyline that goes through all the comics to either reshape the
Crossovers.
Universe or something like that.
They want to make it interesting and attract the audience back.
But, when you look at the Marvel movies and the DC movies, all the stories for the movies, they get their source material is all from the comic books.
I mean, obviously they'll have to do that, otherwise people will protest.
Well, yeah, but it's also, there's a wealth of creativity there that they can
being
tap,
used, and the talent and all that.
Yeah.
How much was a comic book back in those days when you were started, and how much is it now?
When I first started collecting, a comic book was 20 cents, and then it went up to 25 cents. Now, many of the books are, the lower price books are still, some companies are holding them to $2.99, most are $3.99.
Oh, that's it. I actually thought it would be more expensive.
But it's also, I mean, it's not just the cost of the comic has gone up to produce, but they also started to make comic books out of better paper. In fact, in many cases, to call it paper isn't even
But it's not
100%
right.
true. There's a lot of like plastic. They start to make comic books more durable with
So
better
it can last.
paper, so they can last, forever.
Speaking of how much it, do you still have your first comic book?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. How many comics do you have in total, like, out of curiosity? I can imagine going to your house.
I'll try and guesstimate because I just brought everything up to my house and put it to the basement.
Yeah, guesstimate.
And there's some stuff that isn't in boxes, but I'm guesstimating that once I get everything in, I'll have around 80 boxes. So that
Each
just
box?
each box holds like 300. So about 24,000.
2400, wow.
24,000.
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm still trying to digest. I'm like, that's how many. And are you the kind of person, because I remember I used to go for engineering class and all of that, and I got the first comic book which I read was Batman. I don't remember so much of edition, but it was really good. Graphic, every single thing was like amazing. And then but one pivotal moment, what happened was, I actually went to my friend's home to get it. So we went together, and then while giving the book to me, he was like, this is like my child, please take care of it well. So are you that kind of person?
Yeah.
Are all comic book people like that? I mean, I'm like that for a book.
I will say like 95 to 99% of them are. There are a few people that collect comics just to read them and aren't as concerned with keeping them in pristine condition. For instance, not to not, my father used to love to read my comics, but well, he came from a different era. He didn't really like collect them. He enjoyed the stories, but he would have a habit of folding a comic book, and you never want to fold.
That
a
is
comic
always going to
book.
be there.
And,
some people like to fold. I mean, that's
well, yeah, they like to fold and read, and that's something you don't want to do with the comic book.
I can't
But
imagine.
most people that collect comic books are
Very
like that.
protective, like a
Yeah.
chair. Okay,
Yeah.
I can understand that. And speaking about
Well, it's also because now, like, if you have any old comic books, especially from the '60s,
vintage,
of
they go
Marvel,
out for you can sell for a lot of money.
they've gone up exorbitantly. Yeah.
How much?
Well, for instance, I sadly sold my first Thor. The very first Thor and second Thor, just Journey into Mystery 83 and 84
How much?
in 2016 for 2000. Now those books could, and in looking at eBay and what people were asking for and the condition mine was in, which wasn't the best condition, which I knew when I bought it, but I could probably get 10, 11, or 12,000, or maybe 14 for the both of them.
Oh, I can't believe something like comic book is actually going out for so much money.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking of comics, we can go on and on about the comics. But coming to the movies part, see, right now as millennials or Gen Z, what do you want to call us? I mean, that whole debate is there. But I grew up with the movies. My generation grew up with the movies. The first Marvel movie, I mean, you can say it as Hulk or Iron Man. It came in 2008. So at that point, I was like second grade, and the Infinity War Endgame, which was like closure for that whole phase 4, that came out in when I was after 12th grade. It's like span of 10 years. So in a way, I grew up with Marvel. I won't say by me, I don't mean me. I started following only by Civil War, so mine is different
Yeah.
story. But people my age, they typically started following around the craze they had for Iron Man, the way how he delivered dialogues, all of that started around that age. But for you who has been following from a really long time, what was your reaction when Marvel started announcing that they will make movies?
Incoming voice call.
Well, it's a lifelong dream to see the characters and the stories and real life actors, and for them to have the special effects to make it look as good as it looks. I've been waiting basically my whole life for it. I mean, back in the '70s, they had a Captain America TV show. They had they had a pilot for Doctor Strange that but wasn't picked up. They had a Spider-Man show. That's the Superman movie, but beyond the first one or two Superman movies, anything like movies with people didn't take off. And then they had the Batman movie, and that kind of took off a little bit, but it really kind of fizzled. And so you didn't really get anything. I would say the birth of the modern superhero movie starts with X-Men and Spider-Man, those first two movies. And then you had Batman Begins, and then you had a Superman movie.
I mean, they started
But-
roping in big
but-
directors and
but
actors.
but with Iron Man, that started the Marvel movie universe, and
And then
it's something. Iron Man. I've been waiting to see Iron Man on the screen for.
Is that accurate
years.
representation of how Iron Man actually is in the comics? Are actors being
It's-
shown off the
it's,
same way as in comics?
It's close. It's close. I would say that Robert Downey Jr.'s was not 100% the way Tony Stark is in the comics, but
He brought his own touch.
he brought his own touch
That's
to it.
it.
But he was a perfect choice because in the comics, Tony Stark has a drinking problem. They didn't really play up
okay.
that angle in the Marvel movies, but Robert Downey Jr. was a perfect choice to play, given his past history.
So all good casting, like casting 10 out of 10.
I think
by
they've
Bob.
done a very good job with most of the casting for all the movies, and
Casting is fine, but talking about storyline, Are you the kind of person who would go to theaters and be like, hey, that's not what is there in the comics? Are you that kind of person?
Well, I'm the kind of person I've loved all the movies. There isn't a Marvel movie that I haven't liked.
Mm.
I've liked them all. Now that doesn't mean I don't have quibbles or things that if I had done the movie I would have done differently. So, but I'm not one that it's going to detract from my enjoyment of the movie to say, oh, well, that doesn't fit, you know. Like the Guardians of the Galaxy are not the Guardians of the Galaxy that I grew up reading. They're a little different, and it's things that have changed, and they are based after the characters the way they changed them in the comics. But I love those movies. I love the characters. So.
What was your favorite Marvel movie till now, which you've gone and watched?
Wow, that's easy. It's Infinity War.
Okay, very interesting answer.
Infinity War is, in my mind, still is the best comic book movie that was like taking a comic book and putting it on the screen. And I think it was an excellent movie. Now, as great as Endgame was, and Endgame was a great movie
Closure.
in the fact that it was not just a closure to Infinity War. They made it a closure to all the previous Marvel movies, and the way they did it was amazing. But to me, Infinity War is still...
It's right up there, because even
Yes.
in my opinion, I'll tell you, for me what happened was, I am someone who, for Infinity War, I went to the theater 3 hours before. I was so excited about Infinity War, and that was that kind of phase for me. So I was like, Infinity War 3 hours before I was in the theater. I'm like, yeah, we'll go. I was that crazy about Marvel during that time. And after Endgame also, I mean, coming to this is what is building up to my next question. In Infinity War, I was there, and then the same day next year in Endgame, I was there. So all that story, I'm like, yeah, the seat number where I should sit. I was on top of, till that level I was following. But after Endgame, for some reason, it's not about, I'm not the kind of person who cried when Iron Man died. Did you cry when Iron Man died?
No, but I was sad.
Okay, I wasn't sad. But for me, yeah, the war and all the every single thing. But after Endgame, I'm like, it's a good phase for me to leave Marvel and move on. I started getting that kind of mindset. I'm like, yeah, Marvel, it was a good phase. I followed it. I'm happy. After that, and this is not just my opinion. I know a few others, but there are people who actually got excited about Marvel, and they're like, oh my god, Marvel is going to expand. It's going to be. What kind of person are you among these two? I'm on this side.
Well, I'm always I view in the Marvel universe like the Marvel comics, and after a big story, finishes, well, guess what? There's another story coming along, and it might end up being better than that story. And so for me, I'm just happy to see movies like Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I've actually really liked Thor Love and Thunder.
Oh,
There's some people
mixed
say
reviews.
they don't like that, but
Thor
I liked the Eternals movie. But then again,
you're giving very
but-
controversial.
but then again, the Eternals movie, I know those characters a lot more. Most people don't even know those characters. Shang-Chi, I also like that, but I knew about Shang-Chi he's from back in the 70s, but I never really followed
movie
or
was
bought
really good.
Shang-Chi, but that movie was very good, so I'm very excited to see where they're going, and with the Disney Plus TV shows, and I'm looking forward to the second season of Loki,
Oh yeah,
because I
that's
think that's going to
to
play big into what's going on in the second half of the Marvel movies.
My next question is about the series. Since you brought it up, what is your opinion on the series? Like, or series or movies? Which one would you prefer? I'm like, series. Why are they simply making? That's just my opinion. My opinion can be different, but
Well, I'm for both. I mean, I'm for both. I'm for both, and anything that brings characters from the comics to the screen in a positive way, not garbage, but in a
I mean, they are
positive
bringing.
way.
See, positive way. Since you mentioned positive way, this is one thing which I have noticed. Like a lot of series or movies, like Shang-Chi, they have brought in the culture. Like Miss Marvel, they're
Well,
bringing the culture. Do you see that
yeah.
even in the comics, like they're bringing the culture of a. See,
Well,
I mean, look at Miss
I
Marvel.
don't see it.
You told me that Miss Marvel grew up to be Captain Marvel, but in the movies, it's not shown like that. They wanted to bring the history of partition, which is like, yeah, some people now know about partition, which is something I always, I kind of knew because I'm from India. I kind of
Right,
studied as
yeah.
part of history. But for other people, it's more like history lesson. Yeah, so and so happened. They're bringing the culture dynamic.
Well,
that's what
not
the
what I
movies are
meant.
doing.
I mean that's good too. That's not what I meant by positive. Maybe I shouldn't say positive. What I mean is I'm glad that the content that they're putting in the series and on the screen are good movies. I don't want to see, but at the same time, it's what they're doing. It's no different than back in the '60s when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby introduced the Black Panther
Oh,
character, and in the '70s when Luke Cage and and then they did Blade, and you had
Blade series
Storm,
is coming.
and on the X-Men, Chris Claremont had very strong women characters, and so I don't think it's any different than the history of what Marvel has done, and so I think they're just expanding
I mean,
and
speaking
carrying
on-
it through to.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because when you said expanding itself, now with the kind of see when phase 4 kind of thing, yeah, Endgame, all of that ended, and then it kind of got a closure, and then they are bringing so many complex WandaVision. Each there's Loki's timeline theory, and then there's multiverse, and then there's bringing so many superheroes. There's like that. That's when my friend actually Pawan actually he's also a big Marvel fan, and then Anirudh, another. All my close friends are actually Marvel fans. So when I was talking to them, they were actually telling. Pawan actually mentioned that. I mean, the Reddit. That's where people actually follow. Are you active on Reddit?
Nah.
Oh, you should actually. You will have a lot of points to tell to
No,
other
no, no.
Marvel. But then he was like, in 2021 we got so much of content that is actually in a way hard to digest, and like there's so many theories. But after that, when did you watch the San Diego Comic Con announcement? I told you to watch it, right? But then
No,
that's
I
when I
didn't.
actually got back the excitement. Like I got the excitement back. Now I'm excited to see the upcoming movies because at least now I know they are bringing the culmination. Like Avengers are going to come, Secret Wars, Kang Dynasty.
Well,
So
yeah,
that's going to be
the-
interesting.
Yeah, see well, yes, exactly. And the problem is with movies, it's intrinsically difficult to do what Marvel is doing with the movies and whatever because directors think solely about their movie and not anything outside their movie. So like in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, there was a scene that was put in that I guess Kevin Feige wanted to be put in. Well, Sam Raimi wasn't thinking that way. Where me being a comic book person, if you're gonna have multiple universes, I'm like, bang, I'm right there. I was like, Hugh Jackman is Wolverine, gonna get him in there, and and a whole bunch. I would have had a whole bunch more cameos in different worlds, but movie people don't always like to do things like that because they think it will confuse people and whatever. I'm like, no, this wouldn't confuse people.
See, again, movies are actually made to support a wider audience, not just comic book fans, right?
Well, right, exactly, yes. They
So
try
that's
to make
where
it.
I feel
you know.
they
Well,
want to make it appeal to a wider audience, and everything is like PG friendly, like because DC in a way it's like when you compare it to DC movies, it's all like dark kind of thing. Marvel in a way doesn't want to kill off characters, and then Infinity War came, but till then all the fight happens in broad daylight, and then there's comic scenes, and then DC is not like if they want to show someone shooting and they're like bam, they're like done. It's like Philly living in Philly, so yeah, let's not go there. But then but you get the point. But even coming with Marvel, I feel the best part about Marvel, and this is what was the success factor, is the cameos. What is your opinion on the cameos and as well as the post-credit scenes?
Oh well,
Building the
I
excitement.
like number one. I like all the cameos that they've done.
No favorite ones.
Well, I really like the Mark Hamill one, and he was in the latest. He was in Thor.
Oh,
Love
oh,
and
I
Thunder.
haven't actually watched the movie. Okay, yeah, okay.
It's a very quick cameo. I love that Matt Damon. I love that all these big actors want to be. I love that Robert Redford. Not only did he want to be in Captain America: Civil
Oh,
War.
right. No, no,
No,
no. Winter Soldier.
like
Winter
Winter
Soldier.
Soldier.
Winter Soldier.
He also reprised his role for Endgame. So he not only, and this is Robert Redford. You know, you don't get any bigger.
Oh wait, I have to clock
Alright.
out of work. Give me a second. Continue. I actually had to
But
clock
I
out for
think,
work.
you know, getting like it's exciting that Robert Redford wants to be in a superhero movie. It's exciting.
Everyone wants
that
to be in
that
superhero
Sam
movie.
Neill and Matt Damon are willing one to make cameos, not just in one Thor movie, but in two Thor movies. Just the fact that you know some of the people that have acted in the Thor movies is in the Marvel movies is you know is amazing, and it's you know the fact that you know some of these people are you know fans. Not only some of them
Ella, for
fans, but
Their daughter or son has asked them to take the role.
yeah, that and you know now we have creators that are comic book fans, grew up as comic book fans, and are making movies and
That is also there.
you know so it
But
just
choose. Okay, we can see cameos. We have a lot, so we can go choose one post-credit scene. If you had to choose one.
if I had
Okay,
to
I'll go
choose
first.
one.
Captain Marvel in Infinity War. Because in my I'm like they showed the what is that thing called?
Yeah.
Pager.
Communicator,
Pager. Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
communicator, yeah.
So when that fell down and that came and everyone in the theater happened to know who it was and I did not know and my friend actually told me. So yeah, that's Captain Marvel and then I went into his tape. So that was my favorite, probably my favorite.
Let's see now. My favorite. Wow, I'm trying to think.
Oh my god, he has too many favorites, so I don't want to trouble you.
No, I'm just trying to go through all of them, and
It's okay,
It
it's hard,
would-
it's hard.
it would. I guess, let's say, when they showed Thanos at the end of
Ooh.
the first Avengers
That was
movie.
so you kind of the build up for the whole part. So you kind of know that Thanos is the main villain. So that kind of builds up.
Well, that was just like, yeah, they're going to do Thanos because he's like one of the coolest villains in the Marvel universe, and there are a bunch of cool villains, but
I'm hoping to see all of them come into fruition.
I'm
So that's
hoping
going to
we
be fun.
get one of the best villains is Doctor Doom, and we have yet to have a really good representation of him in the movies. So
I
I'm
hope we
hoping
get to see that soon. So
we'll
that's
get
going to be
that.
that. But coming to the movies, we have so many theories on movies. Which one do you think they're going to take it forward? I'm guessing it's the timeline. Or
There-
quantum.
well,
I mean, Ant-Man, this thing is going to
I mean, what I heard was that part of the story of the movies and everything coming after is everybody's reaction to what happened in Infinity War and Endgame. But I think they're maneuvering and how they're going to do it, and they're starting to do it to bring the X-Men and
be. Fantastic Four is actually going to
Four
come next phase. It's going to have.
into the Marvel universe. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to do that. I thought they were going to do it through the multiverse
That's going to be
or
interesting.
you know. So we're going to see exactly how they're going to.
You actually haven't
Yeah.
watched San Diego Comic Con, so basically at the end of
Secret
2026,
War. That's what we're
I
going
was
to do.
out.
Secret War.
Secret was so before that we have Kang Dynasty, so we kind of have an idea that Kang is going to be the ultimate villain for the next this phase. So phase 6 is going to end with two Avengers movies, which is Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. So give a bit gist of Kang, who he is and all of that.
Kang.
Yeah, Kang.
Kang is a time traveler from the future
We seen him in Loki.
purported to be related to Doctor Doom somehow,
Okay.
and he always wants to come back and conquer our current time. And this one particular Kang who comes back to always conquer the time of, say, Earth 616, for lack of a better word, is always defeated by the Avengers. And so, but he's a powerful villain. The Avengers are the ones that have to fight him. And there is, in the comics, a council of Kangs, which are all kinds of different Kangs from all kinds of different times, which they kind of intimated to at the end of Loki. So
It's getting complex. Movies are not as simple as it was before. That's one thing. Now we have to do homework before we have to watch movie. I'm like, that movie, this guy is going to come in that movie.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean,
But-
I don't know, but it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Secret War.
How Secret was in comics. That's the.
Well, there were two Secret Wars. There was the first Secret Wars, where all the heroes and villains were taken to a planet far away by a being called the Beyonder. And that's where Spider-Man got the symbiote, the black costume, which ended up being Venom. And that's where all that came from in the comics. And
What happened to
the second Secret War came about when, I guess, there was apparently more than one Beyonder. A race of Beyonders tried to get revenge, I guess, against the Earth. And Doctor Doom, as he happened in the first Secret War, this Secret War, I guess somehow he got the power of the Beyonders and basically merged all the different Earths into one world, something like called Battle Earth. And actually the theory behind that is that Disney wanted to get all these storylines out, because they pulled storylines that had happened all in the past from Marvel, to get it out to see what would float as good to be good to base movies on. But that was the storyline, and so, you know, you had different storylines happening throughout the story, and in the end, again, it was, you know, Reed Richards defeating Doctor Doom, and then, well, it gets a little complicated, but using the Molecular Man's powers and his son Franklin, who's one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful mutant on the planet, using their powers to reconstruct all the universes and put everything back in order. And that's the excuse they used for the Fantastic Four not to have a comic book for a few years.
I don't know if this is how complex Secret Wars is going to be in the movies. So if
I
it
don't
is
think
going to be
it'll
like
be-
that, I'll have to do homework.
I don't think it'll be that complicated, and it depends. That might be how they bring the Fantastic Four and X-Men in, but unless those movies are coming out sooner, unless they have the movies and then bring them into the Marvel Universe using Secret War.
Everything is getting complex according to me. That's what I'm saying. Like, movies are not as simple as it was before.
Well, I'm sure they'll do it. They'll keep it as simple as they can.
Already,
I'm just theorizing based on what I know of the comic book stories, which doesn't mean anything.
right. What's one upcoming movie which you are excited to watch?
Well, all of them. I mean, the two Avengers movies, of course. I'm not really sure what's.
Yeah, you
What's
didn't watch the
coming up?
San Diego Comic Con. That's why
Yeah.
Ant-Man Quantumania is going to come.
I'm
That's how
excited
the
for
Phase
that.
5 is going to start. Then Marvels is going to come. The Loki season 2 is going to come. So Blade.
I'm excited for those two
Daredevil.
movies.
18 episode season Daredevil.
Well, I'm very excited for that, and I'm actually very excited for Loki season 2. I'm excited for those two movies.
Everyone liked Loki actually. Everyone
Yeah,
loved
yeah. I loved the Loki movie and or Loki series, and you know, hopefully they're gonna bring him back into, you know, the Marvel universe. I mean, they have, but into the movie universe.
I'm like, oh my god, he's back again. I'm like, in Infinity War.
You can't kill Loki.
The God
I
of
mean,
Mischief. So all that is there. Okay, last question. Name a comic book hero who you would like to see in the movie, who hasn't been shown in the movies, and you're like, yeah, that's going to be.
That would have to be. Well, there's two of them really. I want them, the Submariner, but I'm afraid that people are going to say that Marvel's, just mimicking how they portrayed Aquaman in the DC universe, which is very different from Aquaman in the comics.
Okay.
But that, and I'm really, really waiting for DC to do, to not be afraid to bring Green Lantern to the screen or have him in something, just have him be good.
Green Lantern, we already had movies, right?
He had one movie, but it's eternally hated, mocked many times on The Big Bang Theory, and Warner Brothers has just been because, well, they just don't know what they're doing, but they've been eternally afraid to have anything to do with Green Lantern and put him on the screen when that's just ridiculous. What I've learned about anything is if you do a good movie and you make sure that you concentrate on the little things in the movie, then the movie's going to be good and people are going to like it. People like good movies and good characters and the way they're portrayed. If you do it, poorly, well, yeah, they're not going to like it.
Okay, that's true. Last question. If you, of 24,000 books you said, right? If you had to choose one or a few comic books which come to your mind just like that, your favorite ones.
My favorite
I'll go and
ones.
read those alone.
No, but, well, Thor 380 is one of my favorites.
Okay.
Well, Incredible Hulk 181, which is the first Wolverine.
Oh, okay.
There's an Avengers storyline like 272 through 275 where they face off against a bunch of villains and Hercules gets beat up really bad and Thor comes in and helps them take back Avengers Mansion, which they haven't had in the movies. And so there's a lot of comics that are.
If this video does well, I think there'll be a second part for this video. But yeah, as of now, I think I'll end the video here. But yeah, thank you for your time. While I was actually clocked in for work, But yeah, actually, I always wanted to talk to you about Marvel. I mean, we always talk about Marvel here and there and all that. But this is the proper time we actually sat down and talked. Earlier we would work and talk. Now we are sitting down and talk. So thank you for your wonderful insights. What would be your thing to say to Marvel fans or someone who's getting into Marvel or someone who's been following Marvel for a long time? What would you just tell them? How would you tell them to watch movies or anything? I would just say, just be curious and excited for the movies. I know they are going to do well.
Yeah, I mean,
there's
always. I mean, the goal is to always have more movies and more stories because there's an infinite amount of. So, I would say just be patient and just wait for everything to unfold in front of you.
And for all the comic book fans out there who are probably criticizing the video or commenting so much, if they are commenting or something, all I would say is that be chill like him, take movies as movies, take comics as comics, end it there itself. Don't try to bring that in this and that. Otherwise, and theater, we'll have to check who is sneaking in comics and take out the comics. That is what they'll start doing later. I'm guessing that's what we should start.
That sneaks comics in.
Who knows? We should. They'll simply be commenting in the movie. You haven't been to those kind of. Okay, yeah, all that happens. So yeah, I think that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys in the next video. Say bye, Bob.
Bye.
Bye.